It happened last September on a Friday night around 1 a.m. Me and my roommate Kate were walking back from a party at a friend's place. We cut through the mall parking lot because it was faster to get to our apartment complex. During the day it was safe, but at night the lot was empty, just a few streetlights. We were a bit drunk, laughing at a video, when I noticed a figure by the dumpsters about 30 meters to our right. A tall guy in dark clothes stepped into the light and started walking in our direction at an angle, like he was heading toward the exit. I didn't say anything to Kate because I didn't want to be dramatic. People use that lot at all hours, and most of the time it's nothing. I tried to ignore him and kept talking about the playlist from the party. Still, I tracked him in my peripheral as we crossed the next row of faded parking lines. We stayed in the middle lane. My feet hurt from the heels I'd borrowed, and Kate was venting about her boss stealing her mug. I nodded and kept tabs on the guy without turning my head. He wasn't staggering. He wasn't on a phone. His hands were buried in a hoodie, baseball cap pulled low so his face stayed a shadow. I told myself not to be dramatic. We've cut through there 100 times. The detail that stuck was how he matched our speed without overtaking or falling back. Every time we slowed, he slowed. When we sped up, he did too, keeping that angled line. It could have been nothing, but it felt like he was timing us. The lot smelled like hot asphalt and trash, usual late-night mix. The wind was dead and our voices carried farther than I liked. I wished we'd called a rideshare, but it felt stupid to stop. We crossed a dark gap between lights, and Kate latched onto my arm until the next pool of light. "Almost there," I said. In my head I was doing distance math. From here to the sidewalk, then the bend toward our complex gate. Maybe 2 minutes if nothing weird happened. An old HOA email about car break-ins in that lot shoved its way into my brain. It made me check his hands again, still in the pockets. No phone, no cigarette, nothing to justify keeping them hidden. We kept walking, and after a minute the guy called out, "Hey girls, can you tell me how to get to the bus stop on Peachtree Street?" His tone was normal, not slurred. Kate, always friendly, started to turn, but I squeezed her hand and kept us moving. I tossed, "Don't know, sorry," over my shoulder. It came out sharper than I meant, but my gut was yelling not to stop. Another 20 meters, and Kate hissed, "What is wrong with you?" He just asked for directions. I glanced back. He had turned and was following us on the same diagonal, distance steady, face still hidden by the cap. Then he raised his voice. "Wait, do you have a phone? I need to call a cab." Kate slowed like she wanted to help. I said, "Keep moving." I didn't whisper it. "Jess, you're being rude," she said. "He might be stuck." I said, "There's a gas station on the road. He can ask there," and I eased so I was between her and the space behind us. He kept pace like he knew exactly how close to stay so we wouldn't sprint. "I'm not weird," he added, with a small laugh that didn't fit. "Promise." The word promise landed wrong. People who are fine don't advertise it, and Peachtree has a dozen bus stops. Locals are specific. He wasn't. We reached the edge of the lot where the sidewalk wrapped toward our complex. Left was the fastest route. The problem was the stretch ahead, a long section with no working lights between two empty lots. Going right would add time and take us past a closed loading dock. I decided left. At least the sidewalk gave us a clean line to the road if a car came by. "Speedwalk," I said. Kate finally heard enough tension in my voice to stop arguing. Our shoes tapped faster. Behind us, his steps picked up too, closer, less careful. "Wait," he called. "Can I just use your charger?" My phone died. I looked ahead to the nearest lit patch. It was far. The road was empty. For a second, I thought about cutting across the grass by the leasing office and hopping the low fence to the side gate. But that meant total dark, and getting boxed in if he followed. Street side was at least open. "Don't look back," I told Kate. "Just walk." She nodded, and her breathing turned tight and loud. I could feel her hand slick in mine. His voice got closer. "Listen, I just want to borrow a charger." My phone died. I turned around and saw he'd quickened his pace, distance down to 15 meters. His face was still a shadow. His hands stayed in his pockets. His shoulders were forward like he was bracing. Kate whispered, "Jess, he's walking faster." I pulled out my phone and said loudly, "I'm calling the police right now if you don't back off." The man stopped for a second, then started laughing. It was weird, too long. Then he kept walking, faster. I grabbed Kate's hand and said, "Run." We bolted. His footsteps hit the pavement heavy, closing in. Ahead was a lit intersection and a 24-hour gas station. Kate started gasping and lost a step, but I didn't let go. I pulled her and said, "Almost there." The footsteps got louder. He was gaining. We cut across the last bit of lot and burst under the canopy. I yanked the door and we slid inside, the bell chirping. The clerk, a young guy, stared like he didn't know if we were about to steal something or cry. I said, "Call security, someone's chasing us." He grabbed the phone. I turned to the glass. The man stood at the edge of the property, just in the streetlight. In that light I finally saw his face. Maybe 40, unshaven, empty stare. He watched the door like he was counting. He didn't breathe hard. He didn't take his hands out of his hoodie pockets. He stood 10 seconds, then slowly turned and walked back into the darkness, hands still tucked. I kept him in view until he slipped past the trash enclosure. The clerk said security was on the way and asked if we wanted the back room. I said we'd stay by the counter and called 911. I gave our location and a straight description. Tall, dark clothes, cap, followed us from the dumpsters, asked for Peachtree bus, then a charger, matched pace, ran when we ran. The dispatcher said to stay inside and that a patrol was en route. Kate sat by the coffee machines, trying to slow her breathing. A patrol car pulled in 8 minutes later. 2 officers came in. The clerk pulled the cameras. The footage showed us hitting the door, him at the edge under the streetlight, turning away, then only his back as he left the frame. No plate, no car, no clear face. The officers checked outside, swept the dumpsters and the loading dock, and drove the loop around the mall lots. Nothing. One of them said we did the right thing by not stopping, that people use simple questions as hooks. He gave us a card and told us to call if we saw him again. Security rolled through late, one slow lap, and left after the officers cleared it. The officers offered to shadow us instead of calling a rideshare. We said yes. We walked home with the cruiser crawling the curb. No sign of him. At our building, they waited until we were inside the gate. I locked our door twice. We sat at the table. The next day, we told our third roommate and our landlord. I emailed our complex manager about the dead lights and asked for more patrols. We changed our route that afternoon. It added 15 minutes but stayed lit and busy. We stopped cutting through that lot. Kate apologized for brushing it off. We both bought personal alarms and put them on our keys. I replay that night a lot. The laugh that went on. The way he kept the distance until we ran. The hands that never came out of those pockets. What was in there? And what was he planning if he caught us on that dark stretch? I don't know. The officers later told us there had been 3 similar incidents in that area in the past 2 months. Same general description, same pattern. He follows lone women and disappears when witnesses or cameras appear. They never caught him. when I saw the child's handwriting pressed against the glass from inside. "Help, please." Panic hit me hard, because the delivery was supposed to be for a business center, not someone's apartment. Let me back up. It started as my last run of the evening, an express delivery of legal documents to an office complex on Industrial Road. The address took me to an industrial zone on the east side, where new business centers sat next to empty lots. I'd been doing courier work for a year and a half, carrying envelopes and boxes, used to late-night calls. The navigation led me to a 4-story brick building with no signs and no lights. The parking lot was empty, the front door locked. I double-checked the slip, matched the suite number, even refreshed the map in case my app glitched. Same pin, same building. My dispatcher was already off for the night, and this was a no-contact delivery anyway. Good. Drop and go. Only there was nothing to drop it into. According to instructions, I was supposed to leave the package in a mailbox by the entrance, but there wasn't one. Just a metal plate where maybe something used to be, and a buzzer panel with dead buttons. I walked around the building looking for another entrance or a drop box. East side, loading bay, chained. Back side, metal door with a keypad, unlit camera bubble overhead. West side, narrow strip of scrub and a short run of broken concrete. That's when I noticed dim light in second-floor windows. Not bright, like a lamp with an old bulb, just enough to make me stop. I moved closer to get a better look, cupping my hands against the dirty glass of the ground-floor lobby to cut the glare from the street. The upstairs window directly above me had a piece of paper taped to it. The letters were big and crooked, written in thick marker. "Help, please." I stared until my eyes watered. Behind it I could make out children's drawings taped to the wall. Stick people, a house, blue lines for sky, and toys scattered on the floor. A plastic truck, one of those rubber balls with sparkles. My stomach dropped. This was supposed to be an office building. I pulled out my phone to call the client number on the delivery slip. It went straight to a recorded message. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected." I tried again, thinking maybe I fat-fingered it. Same thing. I zoomed my camera and snapped photos of the window, then checked the street for any signs of life. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No sound except a distant semi on the highway. I stepped back to where my car was, the envelope still in my hand, and stood there arguing with myself about whether I was overreacting. Maybe the building had a daycare, but the building had no sign, no cars, no open door, and that paper wasn't a cutesy craft project. I could see the pressure marks from the pen strokes even at that distance. It looked rushed. It looked scared. I called 911 right there, describing the location and what I saw. The operator sounded calm in that trained way. She asked for the address, cross streets, and what exactly the sign said. I read it out loud. She asked if I could see anyone in the window. I said no, just toys, drawings, and that note. She asked me to wait for a patrol unit but advised me not to approach the building. "Stay in your vehicle if you can," she said. "Keep the line open." I told her I'd stay by the car with my lights on the facade. I locked the doors and set the envelope on the passenger seat, suddenly aware of how loud my own breathing sounded in the small space. While I stood by my car, the light in those windows went out. It was like someone pinched a candle. The operator asked what changed. I told her. I tried to keep my voice level, but I think she heard it shake. She reminded me not to go closer. In the darkness, the building looked completely lifeless, like that light had never been there at all. A few moths tapped at my headlights, and for a second I started doubting what I'd seen. Maybe it was a reflection from somewhere behind me, or a poster left by some construction crew, or my brain was trying to make it nothing. But I knew what I'd read. I had the photos. I kept glancing up, willing the light to come back on. Traffic on Industrial stayed thin. A pickup rolled by once, slowed, and then kept going. I kept the operator updated. No movement, no sound, just a dark window and a lot of empty. She told me units were en route, asked me to confirm my vehicle color and make so officers would recognize me. I told her, and turned on my hazards. The minutes stretched. I checked the time twice, then stopped, because watching the clock made it worse. I thought about honking, then didn't. If there was someone scared inside, blasting the horn might push whoever was with them into doing something stupid. I turned down my radio when I realized it was still on low from earlier, some ad whispering about financing. I didn't want any noise I couldn't control. Maybe 5 minutes later, I don't know, it felt longer. The operator said the units were close. I stood up straighter, one hand on the roof, the other gripping my phone like it was a lifeline. Headlights swung wide at the corner, blue strobes washing over the brick. 2 patrol cars pulled up. They went in with flashlights while another officer kept me by the hood of my car going over basics. Name, company, time, what exactly I saw. He asked me to walk him through the route I took around the building. I pointed to the corners, the loading bay, the lobby door. He kept his pen underlining the same few words on his pad. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The radio on his shoulder crackled a few times. Low words I couldn't make out. I gave him my phone so he could see the photos, and he scrolled slowly, like he was trying not to jump to a conclusion. "You took these tonight?" he asked. I said yes, and showed the timestamps. He nodded and handed it back. Around the 20-minute mark, the 2 officers came out and their faces were not what I expected. Not scared, more like irritated and tired. One said, "Building's been empty a long time," and the one with the notepad added, 3 years, per the city sticker on the panel. Utilities are shut. They said the second floor was bare. No furniture, no taped paper on the glass, and dust on the windows so thick that any touch would leave a mark. No disturbances, one said. No fresh footprints. No lights plugged in. I told them about the toys, the drawings. The first officer shook his head. "Nothing like that in there." "Are you sure that's the window?" I asked, and pointed up. He followed my finger. "We checked that line and the next one over," he said. "All empty." He asked if I could have seen a reflection from another building. I said there wasn't another building lit up. He asked if someone could have run a projector from a car. I said I didn't see any other cars. It wasn't combative. He was trying to make sense of it. Then he asked, "Can I see the delivery order?" I pulled up the job page. He took photos of my screen and also of the photos I'd taken of the window. He wrote down the ticket number and the client name exactly as it showed. "We'll follow up," he said. "If you think of anything else, answer when we call." They wrapped it up fast after that. One officer walked me to my car and said, "Don't go back in there. If anyone contacts you about making another delivery here, call us first." He gave me a card. They cleared the scene. I sat for a second with the engine off, then turned the key and left. Back at our dispatch office the next morning, I told my supervisor the whole thing. She logged in and pulled up the job board. The order number I read off didn't exist. She tried different filters. Nothing. "Maybe it was archived," she said, but her voice didn't sound confident. We searched the client database by name and street. No match. She called our IT security guy. He came into the bullpen with a coffee and connected to the server. Within a few minutes, he was frowning. He showed us a log entry that didn't fit the pattern. The order had appeared from an external IP and hadn't followed our normal intake path. "Someone pushed it in," he said. "Not through our portal." He pulled more records and said it was a short event, like a test. My supervisor swore under her breath and called it a cruel prank. She told me to go home and sleep. The officer called me that afternoon. He said they checked with the city, and the building had no active leases, no recent work orders, no alarm pings. He asked me to email the photos and the job details. I sent everything. The next day he called back to say they filed it, and someone might contact me again if something new came up. No one did. 4 days later, I handed in my resignation. I told my supervisor I wasn't trying to make a point. I just didn't want night runs anymore. And in our company, that wasn't an option. She said she understood and shook my hand. I tried to move on. Rational explanations made sense on paper, but they didn't change what I saw. I kept waking up at 3 a.m. and checking my hallway, like noise might be following me home. Twice I thought I heard a child crying through the wall, and both times I stood in my kitchen holding my phone, ready to call. And then it stopped, and I felt stupid and angry at myself. Police closed the case for lack of evidence. The building was demolished a month later for new development. I drove by once and watched the excavator chew through it like it was nothing, and that should have helped, but it didn't. I still see that note when I close my eyes. I still see the pen strokes, the pressure, the way the letters crowd each other like whoever wrote them didn't have time to space it out. But I'll never forget that handwriting. It looked too real. When I was 15, this happened on a regular Tuesday afternoon. My parents were working late. Mom had a hospital shift, and Dad was out on his long-haul trucker route. My older sister was supposed to come back from college by lunch, but texted she was staying late for a group project. I was home alone with our cat Spencer. Around 3 p.m., while I was doing algebra homework, someone rang the doorbell. I thought it was a package delivery for Mom since she ordered stuff online all the time. I opened the door without even looking through the peephole. A man around 35 stood in front of me wearing work coveralls with some utility company patch. He smiled and said, "Are your parents home?" I didn't even think. "No, they're at work." The way he nodded made it feel like he expected that answer. He said, "I see. We're checking gas meters in the area. There were complaints about a leak in one of the houses on the street. I need to check your meter in the basement." I stood there processing. I couldn't remember my parents mentioning inspections. But he looked official, had a lanyard with a shiny badge. He kept it angled so I could see the logo but not read the small print. I started to open the door wider. Then I remembered something from last week. Dad had me follow him around the outside of the house while he showed me where the shutoff was and how to read the meter. He'd said, "Outside by the garage, see? Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I felt that little jolt like when you realize you almost made a dumb mistake. So instead of moving, I leaned my shoulder against the edge of the door and didn't open farther. "Why do you need to go to the basement?" I asked. "The meter is outside, isn't it?" The man jerked a bit, just a tiny twitch, and the smile sat wrong on his face. "Oh, that's the new system," he said. "Internal wiring requires inspection." That sounded off. Gas doesn't have wiring. I didn't know enough to argue properly, but I knew enough to stall. "Wait a minute," I said. "I'll ask my mom." I tried to close the door like I was going to get my phone. He put his hand on the frame. Not hard, just planted there so the door met his palm. "This will only take 5 minutes," he said, less friendly now. "I don't want to come back again." I said, "I'll call my mom first." He didn't move his hand. We just looked at each other for a second. Spencer rubbed against my ankle and I almost tripped, which made me mad at myself for being clumsy because I didn't want to give this guy any reason to push. I said, "Please take your hand off the door." He glanced past me like he was trying to see inside. I remembered the latch chain hanging useless because I'd opened too fast. I also remembered the neighborhood email last month about people faking inspections. The subject line was, "Do not let unknown workers in." I heard our refrigerator hum, normal house sounds, and it suddenly felt wrong that he could hear them too. I kept my hand on the lock and said, "Our meter is outside by the garage." You can check that he didn't even look toward the driveway. "Basement inspection is required," he repeated, like a script. "Ma'am, if there's a leak, sitting here debating it is dangerous." He tried a quick push to test me. The door thudded against his palm. I said, "If there's a leak, I'm calling the company, not letting a stranger inside." He laughed once, sharp. "Stranger? I just told you who I am." He flashed the lanyard closer. The logo looked like a gas flame, but the name was fuzzy, and the photo looked like a rectangle of glare. My stomach dropped in that slow, heavy way. "Name your supervisor," I said. I don't know why that came out of my mouth. Probably because my mom says it to anyone who tries to sell her things. He hesitated. He said a first name that could have been anyone's. Then, "Miss, step aside." That tone made my hands go sweaty. He leaned in more, shoulder to the door. I felt the frame give a little. It wasn't dramatic, just the wood flexing. But it snapped me out of being polite. "I'm calling the police," I said, and started to close it. He shoved harder. The edge of the door scraped his fingers and he hissed, "Don't do that." I yelled, "Dad!" even though no one was home, because I didn't want him thinking it was just me. He stared at me in this quick calculation way, like he was deciding if I was bluffing. I was bluffing, but my voice didn't crack, which felt like a miracle. He said, 5 minutes, like a warning now. That did it. I threw my weight forward, pushed with my hip and shoulder, and slammed the door shut with force, locked it, and put the chain on. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. I ran to the kitchen for the phone and dialed 911. The operator answered fast and asked if I was safe and alone. I said yes. Door locked, chain on. A man pretending to check gas wanted inside. She told me to stay on the line and move away from the door, not to open it for anyone unless I saw a real police uniform and badge through the window. While I was talking, the banging started. He yelled, "Hey, open up! I need to do my job." It wasn't joking, it was pushing. The operator said officers were on the way and to keep talking to her. I went into the hallway where the front door wasn't visible and gave her our address again, spelled my last name, repeated his description. He banged hard once more, and then it went quiet. She asked if he'd left. I edged to the living room window, nudged the curtain with 2 fingers. There was no car or van on the street, no one on the porch. He had just disappeared. The operator said to stay off the porch and wait inside. She kept me talking about safe rooms, exits, that kind of checklist. It felt weirdly calm after the noise, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I listened for footsteps or a gate latch. Nothing. 8 minutes later, she told me it had been 8. I saw a patrol car roll up and another one right behind it. They parked at angles like they practiced this. 2 officers came to the door, a man and a woman. I checked through the side light and saw badges and uniforms before I unlatched the chain. My voice cracked when I said my name. They did a quick sweep. The female officer asked me to stay where she could see me while her partner walked around the house and checked the yard and the street. Another car cruised slowly up and down. No trace of him. No footprints I could see. No tire tracks that stood out. The male officer photographed the door, the scuff where his hand had pushed, the chain. He asked me to run through it again, step by step, so I told them about the coveralls, the utility patch, the lanyard, the way he insisted on the basement. I said he was average height, dark hair, blue work coveralls, mid-30s maybe. I couldn't remember what was written on the patch. I admitted I didn't read the badge close, just saw a logo shape. They radioed in my description and asked about cameras. We didn't have any then. The woman officer wrote down the time of the first knock. She asked if I'd noticed a vehicle earlier. I said no. She didn't judge, just nodded. The man officer checked the side gate and the garage door, said both were shut tight. They told me they'd patrol the block for a bit and talk to the neighbors. I thanked them and felt dumb for thanking them so many times. Before they left, the female officer said, "You did the right thing by locking the door and calling. Don't second guess it." They called the gas company from their car on speaker so I could hear. There were no inspections scheduled for our neighborhood. The dispatcher also said they'd had several similar incidents in recent weeks where people pretended to be utility workers to get inside. 2 other families had refused entry and called it in. In one case, an elderly woman had let a worker in, and he took cash and jewelry while she went to the kitchen for water. The officers didn't say lucky, but that's how it landed. They gave me a case number and told me to call if anyone came back or if I remembered anything else. I wrote the number on a sticky note and stuck it to the fridge because I didn't want to lose it. My parents came home that evening. Mom hugged me so tight my neck hurt and wouldn't let go for a long time. Dad talked to the officers on the phone, thanked them, and after we hung up, he said we were putting a video doorbell in the next day. No discussion. We also agreed I would never open the door for anyone unless I was expecting them and could confirm with a parent on the phone, not just a text. For the next few weeks, I jumped at every doorbell and every knock. Spencer hated the chime and bolted every time, which didn't help. The police never found that man, and he didn't show up in our neighborhood again. Maybe he moved on. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't remembered about the meter, if I had believed the internal wiring line, if I had let him into the house. I looked at my phone screen for the 3rd time in the last 10 minutes, trying to figure out what it meant. Device Trent Galaxy wants to pair popped up around midnight while I was in bed. I've been living alone in the studio in Portland for 2 months. I usually keep Bluetooth off, but I'd turned it on that evening to connect my headphones. I hit ignore. 2 minutes later, same notification. Someone with that device was close enough for my phone to see them. Maybe a neighbor. But the walls are thick. It's an old place. I got up, walked the apartment, checked the deadbolt. Everything was locked. After 5 minutes, the notification stopped, and I told myself I was being paranoid. But I need to rewind a couple weeks to explain why that scared me. I rented this place in early September through a friend of the owner. Handshake deal, cheap rent, perfect for a student. I'm 22, studying engineering, and I work as a cashier at a 24-hour grocery 3 nights a week. My schedule's all over the place. I'm rarely home at the same time 2 days in a row. The first month was fine. Then I started noticing small things. Milk went faster than I drank it. I'd buy a carton for the week. 3 days later, it was nearly empty. I figured I was miscounting, drinking more after late shifts. Then Wednesday morning, my electric razor was damp even though I'd shaved Monday and skipped Tuesday. My towel was hanging from the wrong hook, not where I always leave it after class. The toothpaste ran out in 2 weeks when it should last a month. I blamed exam stress, bad sleep, and my head being somewhere else. It's not like I catalog every item I touch. But then it escalated into something I couldn't chalk up to memory. I came home Thursday afternoon after lectures, and the shower stall was still wet. Fogged mirror, beads of water on the floor. I hadn't showered since early Wednesday. Actually, I skipped it because I was late for the bus. I remember running out with greasy hair and telling myself I'd deal with it after lab. I took a photo of the wet stall with a timestamp. I needed something real to look at when I started doubting myself later. The next day, I set a simple trap in the bathroom. Shampoo on the left, body wash on the right, bar soap centered and parallel to the edge. No reason anyone would move that by accident. I went to my evening shift, came back around 11, and the bottles had swapped sides. The soap was crooked. My face felt hot when I saw it. That wasn't stress or forgetfulness. Someone used my bathroom while I was gone. I checked the front door again. Deadbolt turned smooth, strike plate tight, no scuffs or pry marks. The windows all have those crank handles and lock from inside. You can't push them in from outside without breaking glass, and nothing was broken. I told myself to think like an engineer. If there's an effect, there's a cause, and it's not magic. Either I'm moving stuff in a rush and forgetting, which didn't fit, or someone with a key was coming in. I called the guy next door. We'd only talked twice in the hallway about recycling day and where to park, that kind of small talk. He answered on speaker, TV loud behind him. I asked if he'd noticed anything weird. People in the hall, new repair guys, doors propped open. He chuckled like I'd made a joke and said, "This building's always had weird stories, man." But nothing specific. I asked what he meant by weird stories. He just said, "Old tenants being dramatic." "You good?" I said yeah, lied, and hung up. I tried to make a list. The landlord? It's a handshake lease. He might have a maintenance guy who cuts through without telling me. But why use my stuff? Why take a shower? If it's someone with a key, it's either the owner, someone he gave a key to, or someone who got it copied. I thought about the Bluetooth notification again. Trent_Galaxy. I don't know a Trent. My classes are full of Bens and Joshes and a couple of Mariahs. No Trent. If it's a neighbor, okay, but the walls are thick, and my phone only saw it when I was in bed. That means the device was near my side of the wall, or literally inside my place. And if that's true, I've got a person entering my apartment and hanging out close to where I sleep. That idea made my chest feel tight. Saturday morning, I put a piece of clear tape on the door frame right over the latch, just a hair crossing from frame to door so it would rip if anyone opened it. I did the same on the bathroom cabinet. I recorded a quick video of how I left everything, bottles, soap, towel, then went to work an extra shift for the overtime. When I got back, both pieces of tape were intact. The shampoo and body wash were exactly how I left them. I started to feel stupid. Then I opened the fridge and the milk I just bought was half gone. No joke. I hadn't touched it. I stood there with the fridge open, doing math that didn't make sense. I texted the owner, "Hey, can you let me know if anyone came by? Stuff's getting moved." He didn't reply. He tends to answer late, so I gave it an hour, then 2. Nothing. Around midnight, I laid down with my phone on the nightstand and Bluetooth off this time. I watched the ceiling and told myself I'd drop the class with the 7 a.m. lab because I wasn't sleeping anyway. 5 minutes later, the screen lit up. Device Trent Galaxy wants to pair. I hit ignore. 2 minutes later, the same. I got up, checked the deadbolt, checked the windows, turned the lights on in the kitchen and bathroom. I stood still and listened. No footsteps, no pipes, just the fan. The notification stopped after a few minutes. I called my neighbor again and asked if he'd seen anyone in the hall this late. He snorted and said, "This place always has weird stories, dude, but nothing specific." That didn't make me feel any better. I bought a cheap camera on Amazon and set it in the corner pointed at my front door. For 2 weeks, I reviewed the recordings every night after work. Nothing. No one came in or went out through the door. But the weird stuff kept happening. I bought a new pack of cookies and put it in the cupboard. 2 days later, half the pack was gone. I started marking my groceries with a Sharpie, lines at the liquid level on bottles. The next day, the lines sat higher than the juice. Someone was drinking it. The washing machine was warm when I got home, though I hadn't done laundry in 3 days. 2 t-shirts vanished from the hamper, then reappeared clean and folded. I couldn't explain any of it without sounding unwell. The camera showed a locked door, but someone was obviously here. That night, the Bluetooth notification came back. Friday morning, my alarm went off at 7. I turned it off and lay there for 1 minute, thinking about class. Then a second alarm started. Quiet, muffled, the default Samsung tone. It came from inside the bathroom wall. 10 seconds, then it cut. After that, I heard a low male curse and a scrape, like someone shifting their weight, behind the wall. I got up slowly, walked into the bathroom, and pressed my ear to the wall behind the sink. Nothing. I knocked with my knuckles. Hollow. I stepped into the hall and called the owner. I told him I thought someone was inside the wall. He asked if I was kidding. I said no. He said he'd come by. I waited in the stairwell because I didn't want to be in there alone. He showed up an hour later with a small toolbox, still skeptical, like he expected to find mice. We went straight to the bathroom. He looked at the mirror over the sink, tapped the corners, and slid a flathead under the edge. "It's not screwed in," he said. The corner lifted. Magnets. He pulled the mirror off. Behind it wasn't tile. It was a false drywall panel on magnetic brackets. He reached in and popped the panel free. Behind it was a narrow cavity, about 1 meter wide, running the length of the bathroom. A sleeping bag was rolled near the corner. A backpack. Water bottles. Grocery bags with my food. A phone charger plugged into a hidden outlet. Paperwork with the name Trent Willow. The owner stopped talking and stepped back. "We're calling the police," he said. I nodded and kept my hands visible. The officers arrived fast. They checked the cavity and the utility chase, then the hallway. One pushed up the attic hatch and shouted, "Hands where I can see them!" Something scraped above us. A minute later, they brought down a thin guy in jeans who wouldn't meet our eyes. He said he was Trent. In the hall, with the owner listening, he told them he'd been living in the walls for 4 months. 1 month before I moved in, and 3 after. He used the attic hatch, climbed down inside the framing, and came in through the panel when I was gone. He showered, ate my food, washed clothes, and slept in the wall. He said he didn't want to hurt anyone. He just needed somewhere dry. They cuffed him and took him downstairs while an officer photographed the setup. I moved out a week later. On paper, I'm fine, but I still tap bathroom walls and check behind the mirror before I sleep. During the summer of 2020, when everything shut down, I lost my job as a manager at a travel agency. Tourism collapsed and the company closed. My boyfriend Kyle worked construction, and his crew got put on unpaid leave too. We were renting an apartment in the city but couldn't afford it without jobs. A friend of my aunt named Brenda offered us a cottage belonging to her brother. He was in the hospital after a stroke and the place was empty. Brenda said we could stay there for free until things got better. The cottage sat way out, near a store a long drive. One neighbor, an old lady named Mrs. Gray with 3 cats. Kyle found temporary work at a warehouse 3 weeks later, but had to take a bus there every day, about an hour and a half each way. He'd leave just before 7 and get back a little after 8. We were grateful, but the schedule meant I stayed alone most days. I'm Rachel, 28 then, feeling like a kid again because the cottage felt borrowed, like we were house-sitting for someone we didn't know. For the first 2 weeks, I leaned into the quiet, read paperbacks I'd never finished, cooked a lot, sent out resumes, tried applying for remote jobs that sounded fake half the time. The place was one story, 3 rooms, and a kitchen. Big windows with no curtains in the living room and kitchen. Only the bedroom had blinds. Front door at the small entrance, back door from the kitchen to a deck that needed paint. On a Wednesday around 2 in the afternoon, I was on the couch with my laptop when I saw movement through the living room window. At first, I thought it was a deer. Then I realized it was a man in a gray hoodie standing at the edge of the property, maybe 60 feet from the house, facing the windows. He didn't fidget or look around, just stood there. I waited, telling myself he'd walk on. He stood for what felt like forever. Later, I decided it was 3 minutes because that sounded reasonable, then turned and walked into the woods behind the house. I stayed very still, trying to make the moment ordinary again. Maybe he was a lost hiker, maybe checking a property line. I got up, locked the front door, checked the back door, then sat down and stared at the reflection in my black laptop screen. I called Brenda to ask if anyone had permission to be out back. She said no, and then asked if I wanted her to call the sheriff. I told her no, not yet, that it was probably nothing. Her voice went careful, and she told me to text her if he came back. I thought about taking a photo if I saw him again, told myself I'd do that next time, then immediately felt dumb for not doing it already. Next day came slow. Thursday, at about the same time I saw him again. I was rinsing a bowl at the sink and noticed him in the microwave door's reflection. I turned, and there he was, closer this time, maybe 30 feet from the kitchen side window. Same hoodie, hands down at his sides, like he was waiting for a bus that never came. I went out onto the porch and called, "Do you need something?" He looked straight at me. No wave, no step forward. He turned and walked into the trees again. Not fast, not slow. Just done with me. I went inside and called Kyle. He picked up on his break. I told him everything. He went quiet a few seconds and said, "Lock the doors. If he comes back, call the police. I'll try to get off early." I checked the locks and closed the bedroom blinds. Then I called Mrs. Gray to ask if she was expecting anyone on her land. She said no, just her cats and the mail, and told me to keep the doors locked and don't be shy about 911. She also said she'd keep an eye out from her kitchen window. That helped a little. Evening came and Kyle didn't get off early. He apologized when he got home. We ate and talked it through. He thought maybe a surveyor or a guy from the utility company got turned around, even though there were no trucks. We decided I'd keep my phone charged and my shoes by the door. It felt like a plan. Friday morning he left as usual, quick kiss. I'll call at lunch. And he was gone. It was quiet except for the fridge buzz and a truck somewhere far off on the highway. I did the dishes, started a pot of chili to stretch a few days, and refreshed the job board again. Around 1 I heard knocking on the front door. Not normal knocking. It was spaced out. Knock, 5 seconds. Knock, 5 seconds. I stood and waited for a third knock because patterns make it easier to think. It came. I grabbed my phone and walked to the entry. My hand hovered over the chain. I remembered Kyle's voice. Lock the doors, call if he comes back, and told myself I wasn't opening anything. I didn't open it. I checked the deadbolt out of habit, then leaned to the peephole. The man in the gray hoodie stood right in front of the door. I shouted through the door, asking who he was and what he wanted. No answer. The knocks kept going. Knock, pause, like he was timing it. I backed away and grabbed my phone. I dialed 911 and watched the little dots spin, then it dropped. Reception out here was always trash. I ran to the bedroom where the signal sometimes worked and tried again. It rang once, then nothing. The knocking stopped. I held my breath, listening. I pulled the blinds up a sliver and saw him walking along the side of the house toward the back. I ran to the kitchen and checked the deadbolt. It was locked, but it was the old kind you could probably pop with a butter knife. He showed up on the other side of the glass, close enough that I saw sweat on his upper lip. He looked right at me and started pulling the handle, steady, like testing the give. I grabbed a rolling pin and stood about 6 feet from the door with my phone in the other hand. He yanked the handle for a minute, then stopped and stared at me through the glass. No expression, just that blank watching. I raised the phone and shouted that I'd called the police and they were on the way. That was a lie, but I said it like I believed it. He tilted his head, backed out of view, and I lost sight of him. I stayed in the kitchen counting to 100, then another 100, then 10 minutes because it felt safer to measure time. I edged to the living room window and looked out at the trees. He wasn't there. I locked myself in the bedroom and sat on the floor by the closet, phone in the air trying to catch a bar. I kept listening for the handle again, for footsteps, anything. Around 4, a bar flickered and stuck. I called Kyle first. He said, "I'm leaving now," without me asking. Then I called the police. An officer said he'd be there in about 40 minutes. I waited in the locked bedroom and texted Brenda that someone was messing with the house. Kyle's car and the patrol car pulled up almost together. I heard voices and finally went out. The officer walked the property, checked the doors, and shined a flashlight under the deck. He said he couldn't find anything, not even footprints that stood out. The dirt was hard. He took my statement by the hood of his car and told us a patrol could swing by more often. He asked if we wanted to stay somewhere else for a night or two. Me and Kyle looked at each other. We didn't have anywhere else. We said we'd be okay. That night around 3 in the morning, the knocking came again at the back door, not polite this time. It was hard and fast, like someone trying to drive their way through. Kyle jumped up and grabbed the baseball bat from under the bed. I was already on with 911, trying to keep my voice steady. The knocking went a full minute, and then wood cracked. A panel at the bottom of the door broke with a pop. I yelled into the phone that he was breaking in. Kyle moved into the hallway with the bat and told me to stay behind him. The dispatcher said a car was on the way, 3 minutes out. The knocking stopped. We heard footsteps in the kitchen, the scrape of a chair falling. A man's voice mumbled something I couldn't make out. Kyle kept the bat up and said, "I've got a weapon. Police are coming." The sirens got loud, and the footsteps rushed toward the back. Then a dog barked like it was on top of him. The next minute felt clipped. A shout, "Sheriff's Department! Get down!" Then quiet. An officer called for us to stay inside. Another 2 minutes, and they said they had him. We went out when they waved us. The man in the gray hoodie was face down in the grass about 60 feet from the house, hands cuffed, a German shepherd sitting beside an officer like a statue. He looked around 40, clothes dirty, hair tangled, eyes unfocused. He smelled like alcohol even from a few steps away. One officer said there was a rehab center not far down the road, the kind that handles mental health and addiction, and maybe he wandered out. The man just mumbled nonsense. In his pockets, they found an empty bottle and a lighter. They asked if we wanted to press charges. We said yes. They took him away and told us a patrol would sit outside until morning. We packed at dawn. Brenda was shocked and kept apologizing, but we told her it wasn't her fault. We went back to the city and slept in a friend's spare room until we figured out the next step. A week later, an officer called and said the man had escaped from that rehab center and they returned him. No other details. I still can't sleep unless I check all the locks 3 times. About 2 years ago, I was bartending at this craft brewery with a small restaurant attached. Evenings were busy, but afternoons brought mostly regulars. I had a solo shift on Wednesday afternoons, no wait staff until evening, so I handled both the bar and a few tables myself. Around 2 p.m., this woman, maybe 40, in a business suit, came in and sat at the bar. She ordered a light beer, opened her laptop, seemed to be working. Nothing unusual for our place. I poured her beer, she paid with a card, left good tips. She sat for about an hour, had a second glass, then closed her laptop and left. Just a normal customer. Next day she came back, same time, same seat, same order. Light beer, laptop open, working. I figured she worked remotely and picked our place as her office. That happens. Third day she came again, but this time she didn't sit at the bar. She took a corner table with a view of the whole room and the kitchen exit. When I brought her order, she was staring at me, not at her laptop, and quickly looked away when I caught her eye. I started feeling uncomfortable but told myself I was being paranoid. She left after an hour, again leaving good tips. This continued all week, every day, same time. Now she wasn't even pretending to work. The laptop stayed closed. She just sat with her beer and watched in my direction. By Friday, I recognized her car too, a gray sedan with a dented bumper. She always parked across the street, close enough to see the front door. She'd come in, sit, tip, leave. No problem to solve, right? Still, I noticed that when I passed her table, she tensed, like she thought I was going to say something personal. I didn't. I kept it professional. Another light? Thanks. She hardly spoke. No ring, no visible company badge. The card name on the receipts said M. Harris. That's all I knew. I kept the receipts because I'm the kind of person who keeps everything. And that started to feel relevant, even though nothing had actually happened yet. Friday evening after my shift ended, I noticed her car in the lot across the street. She was sitting inside, watching the brewery entrance. I was off the clock, but I went back in and told the manager, Tom. He squinted through the window, said, "Okay, if she comes back in and acts weird, I'll handle it." He's ex-military, calm guy. "You want me to walk you out?" I told him no, because it was still light out and the lot had other people. I left by the front and looked both ways like I always do. Partly habit from counting cash, partly because that car had me thinking. Monday she came again, 2 p.m. But when she saw Tom deliberately come out to the floor and hover by my end of the bar, she got stiff. She finished her beer fast, left half the second, and bounced. Tom followed her to the door. Didn't say anything, just stood where she could see him. We decided he'd be the person to speak if she kept showing up. His reasoning: I shouldn't have to handle a situation that was starting to feel like it involved me, and if she had some complaint or grievance, she'd tell him. She didn't come Tuesday or Wednesday. I felt silly for how much space she'd been taking up in my head. I stopped checking the street every time the door chimed. Then Thursday, long day, we had trivia, kitchen slammed, and I stayed to close. I walked out a little before midnight through the side hall that leads to the employee lot. The door swung shut behind me, and the lot was dark. 2 lights out, maintenance ticket already in. That's when I saw the gray sedan wasn't across the street. It was in our lot. And she was standing by my car, hands in her coat pockets, just waiting. I stopped. Not panic, more like my brain immediately went checklist. The door behind me was locked, but I had keys. Tom was still counting down in the office. There's a camera over the lot. I kept my distance and said, "Ma'am, can I help you with something?" She didn't move. She said, "I didn't want to bother you inside." Her voice was flatter than I expected, like she'd rehearsed the line and run out of tone for it. I told her, "It's late. If you need something from the restaurant, the manager's inside." She shook her head once. I took out my phone where she could see it. "I'm calling Tom to come out." She said, "Please don't," and took one small step closer, not aggressive, but enough that I put my hand up and said, "Stop there." She did. The lot was quiet, no cars passing on the street now, just our exhaust fan humming behind the wall. I backed up half a step so I wasn't inside her reach. In my head, I was already thinking through plates, dates, the receipts with her name, what to tell police if this went bad. I didn't raise my voice. I kept it steady so she'd hear me clearly. I told her again that the manager could talk, and that I wasn't going to have a conversation in a dark parking lot. She stood there, watching my face like she was trying to decide something. Her hands stayed in her pockets, which I did not like. I didn't see a bulge, but I wasn't going to guess. My keys were in my back pocket. I wasn't reaching for them. I shifted my weight, angled my body so I could pivot to the door if I had to bolt. She exhaled, a quick, frustrated sound, and then she started to speak, and I stopped several feet away. She said she wanted to talk. I asked about what, and she rambled about us being connected and how I understood her. I said I didn't know her and none of this made sense. She stepped closer. I backed up, pulled my phone, and called Tom. He came out fast, and she left, saying we'd talk again later. Tom told me to file a police report. I did the next day. The officer said without threats, they could only document it. That night, Tom stood by the office door while I wrote down times, her name from receipts, and the car. "You're not overreacting," he said. "We'll take this seriously." He offered to call then. I said morning would be better because my hands were shaking. He and the kitchen lead closed together so I didn't leave alone. At the station, the day shift officer flipped through my notes and a still from our camera. He explained trespassing and harassment and told me to call 911 if she refused to leave. It made sense on paper, but it didn't fix the part where she knew my hours in my car. 4 days passed without seeing her. Sunday evening, the gray sedan rolled past my house at a crawl. Same dent, windows up. She didn't look over. It felt like a message. I went inside, locked up, called Tom, then called the non-emergency line. The dispatcher took the report and said the same thing. No stop, no trespass, no action. I asked about changing plates. They said it wouldn't matter if she already knew the car. I called my friend Nate and asked to crash for a while. He said yes and told me to bring my spare key for his building. I packed a bag and told my landlord I'd be at a friend's because of a safety concern. I sent him the case number and he said to keep him updated. Tom changed my shifts to unpredictable times. He took me off regular afternoons and spread me across mornings and closings. His logic was simple: break the pattern so she couldn't track me. For the next month, I treated it like basic counter-surveillance. I varied routes, watched mirrors, and parked under cameras. I walked in with other staff and avoided routine. I didn't post my hours or talk about my schedule unless I had to. She never came back to the bar during that time. The door chime still made me look up. I kept the receipts with her name in an envelope with the report number. I checked the street before leaving every shift. Nothing happened, but I held the line anyway. When the month ended, I was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. After 2 months, I stopped seeing her, and I guess she lost interest or moved on to someone else. I never understood what triggered her attention. I was just doing my job, being polite the way I am with everyone. The habit stuck anyway. I still scan the lot before I unlock my car, even on sunny days when it feels dumb to be cautious. Tom put up better lights, replaced the dead cameras, and made a rule that closing staff leave together. He keeps a copy of the report in the office safe, and my envelope stays there too. Sometimes I wonder if she did this to other service workers who smiled because it was our job. No idea why. Other days I think maybe something about me set her off. The not knowing is worse than the actual incidents, because I keep wondering if she'll come back. I was 15, and for the first time in my life I was staying alone for 3 whole days. My parents drove to Arizona for my grandfather's funeral, and my older sister lived in a college dorm 2 hours away. Mom didn't want to leave me alone, but I convinced her I could handle it. I had the neighbor's phone number, a list of emergency contacts on the fridge, and strict orders to call every evening. Our house stood on the outskirts of a small Pennsylvania town. Nearest neighbors lived 200 meters away, and evenings were very quiet around there. The first night, Friday, I ordered Chinese food, did my homework, and went to bed without problems. On the second night, I decided to treat myself a little. I turned on all the lamps in the living room, put my favorite show on the laptop, and pulled out a box of protein bars from the pantry that Dad bought at some new health food store. They promised natural energy boost on the package. The bars were sickeningly sweet with a taste of almonds and something grassy, but I ate 3 in a row, washing them down with water because I didn't feel like having dinner. I figured it was just sugar and weird vitamins. I remember telling myself, "It's fine, don't be dramatic," and hitting play on the episode. About an hour later, around 10 p.m., I felt a strange lightness in my body and noticed the laptop screen looked brighter and extra sharp, like I'd turned up a setting I didn't know existed. I blamed it on tiredness and kept watching, but soon noticed my hands on the keyboard left a faint glowing trail like in slow-motion footage. I stared at my fingers, then at the trackpad, then back at the moving glow. My heart sped up. It was pretty and also wrong. I stood up from the couch to get water, and that's when I saw a huge geometric pattern of dark blue and purple lines crawling across the living room wall, pulsing in rhythm with my breathing. There was no panic yet, more curiosity and mild concern. I touched the wall, and the pattern snapped away like a pop-up closing, then reappeared on the ceiling, spreading corner to corner. I turned the lamps off and on. It didn't care. I tried the hallway light. Same thing. I told myself, "You're overtired, drink water, reset." And I sat back down, holding the glass with both hands so I didn't spill. The next 2 hours turned into some surreal thriller that I didn't sign up for. Sounds became volumetric and echo-like. The clock ticking in the hallway sounded like gong strikes. The refrigerator hummed like an engine roar idling in the kitchen. Every click from the baseboard heater stretched and bounced around the room. I could feel each sound land in my chest. I saw a flock of tiny glowing butterflies drift out of the kitchen ventilation grate. Not cartoon bright, more like faint bits of light that formed wings and bodies the second I focused on them. They circled above the sink and disappeared when I reached out, like they fell through my fingers. I kept telling myself out loud, "It's not real. It's chemicals. It will pass." Hearing my own voice come back at me twice, once close, once far, didn't help. Then I looked out the window and froze. The entire backyard was covered in moving fog. Not normal mist, but slow waves and long dark arms. Branch shapes, I guess. But they moved like deliberate arms, pushed up out of it, reaching toward the house. I knew this couldn't be reality, but the sight was built perfectly for my brain at 15. It triggered the same reflex as seeing a stranger by the back door. I dropped the curtain and felt the living room slip sideways for a second, like the floor tilted. "Lock the doors," I said. That was real. That had rules. I went room to room in short bursts. Back door, locked. Side door, locked. Front door, locked. Then double-checked. then checked again because the echo made me think I'd imagined the first click. I checked the windows. Latches down. I tested the one in the dining room that sometimes sticks, then shoved it tight and pulled the chair under the handle, even though that wouldn't actually do anything. I dragged 2 kitchen chairs into the living room and angled them against the couch like a barricade, mostly to force myself to sit and not pace until I fell over. My hands shook, but not dramatically, more like small tremors that made the keys rattle when I touched them. I kept negotiating with myself. If it was food poisoning or some stimulant hidden in those bars, the safest plan was to stay put, hydrate, breathe, wait it out. But the visuals weren't letting up. If anything, they started folding into my thoughts. I'd blink and see a map of the house stamped on the inside of my eyelids, each door flashing red or green depending on whether I'd checked it. I'd blink again, and the pattern on the ceiling would align perfectly with that map, like it was showing me a pathway I was supposed to walk. I didn't move. I sat on my hands. The noises ramped again. The hallway clock hit each second like a hammer. The fridge started up and it sounded like a truck changing gears. I took shallow breaths so the room wouldn't pulse with me. I tested the TV for white noise, but the menu screen crawled with color bands, alive in a way it shouldn't be, so I shut it off. I tried the show on my laptop again, thinking familiar voices might anchor me. The actors' mouths lagged behind their words, and for a second I thought they were speaking to me directly. I slammed the lid shut. Somewhere behind the fear, I understood exactly what was happening. My brain was misfiring because I fed it something I shouldn't have. That thought was steady and boring and important. I held on to it like a handrail. I needed help. I grabbed my phone. My first instinct was 911, but I pictured paramedics pounding on the door while I sat behind chairs and a couch, panicking. And I pictured trying to explain the fog with arms and the butterflies and having Mom find out from a report. I needed someone who wouldn't make it worse. I scrolled to my sister's name and pressed call. Calling my parents at Grandpa's funeral to say I was hallucinating seemed impossible. I pictured my mom's face in a pew, phone buzzing, and me babbling about butterflies and fog arms. So when my sister answered with a sleepy, "What?" I tried to sound calm, but it came out as choking and hiccups. She laughed a little at first. She thought I was prank calling, or maybe I'd watched a scary movie. And then I forced the words out. I told her about the glowing butterflies from the vent, the blue lines crawling on the ceiling, the fog outside with arms reaching for the house, and that I'd barricaded the living room with chairs. My voice shook so hard I had to stop twice. She went quiet. "Okay, not funny," she said. "Listen. Take a photo of whatever you ate. The bars. Send me the wrapper. Front and back I found the box in the pantry and my hands wouldn't cooperate. I took 3 blurry pictures, then a clear one, then the ingredients. I sent them. While I waited, I stared at the floor because the ceiling patterns tried to line up with my breathing again. She called back fast. "It's listed right there," she said, reading the name of some Hawaiian herb I'd never heard of. She said there'd been news stories, kids ending up in the hospital with panic attacks and visual stuff after taking supplements with it. "You're not dying. It's a drug effect," she said, firm enough to cut through the echo. "Drink water. A lot. Don't look out the windows, and turn on every light in the house. Kill the shadows." I did exactly what she said. I filled a big glass, then another. I went room to room, flipping every switch. The house looked like a stage, but it helped. Without big shadows, the geometry had fewer places to crawl. I kept my eyes down when I passed windows, just stared at the baseboards and my socks. She stayed on the line and talked about boring stuff on purpose, classes, a professor she hated, what she ate for dinner, so my head had normal anchors. Over time, the sounds got less huge. The fridge went back to a hum instead of a truck. The clock still hit hard, but it wasn't a hammer anymore. By 3 in the morning, the visions weakened into light spots at the edges. They popped like after images if I stared straight at them. If I looked too long, the spots tried to collect into bugs again, so I didn't. I kept sipping water. I kept every light on. I put the TV to a dumb channel with a laugh track and set the volume low because the laugh track, weirdly, felt safer than silence. My sister told me to call if it got worse and made me promise not to open the door to anyone. We hung up. By dawn, they were gone. The patterns flattened into paint and the windows were just windows again. I stayed on the couch anyway, shoes on, blanket over my knees, TV still on. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt a shift, so I didn't sleep. When the sun was up for real, I put the bars in a trash bag and walked them outside to the big bin. I washed my hands twice. Then I called my parents and said everything was fine. They came back a day later and I told them everything. I didn't try to soften it. Dad took me to the doctor that afternoon. They checked my vitals, ran through questions, looked at the wrapper photos I still had on my phone, and told us what we already knew. Supplements aren't regulated like medicines, and a label can hide a lot. She said, avoid anything with buzzwords or ingredients I don't recognize, and to go to the ER if anything like that ever happened again. The health food store closed a month later after complaints. Now it's years later and I can make a joke about glowing butterflies and fog arms. But that night was 5 hours of pure fear. I read every ingredient now. I don't touch natural energy boost, exotic herbs, or anything that sounds like a shortcut. I still don't like turning off all the lights if I'm alone. And sometimes I think about who else bought those bars that weekend and what they saw in their own houses. I only realized the garage door was open when I heard footsteps on the concrete floor, and Caitlin's parents had left half an hour ago. The light in the house went out completely, every room at once, and I was sitting at the computer on the second floor typing up our biology report. Caitlin yelled from downstairs asking if something broke, but I could see the neighbors across the street still had their lights on. Ethan, her 13-year-old brother, didn't answer from the basement where he was supposed to be looking through books for illustrations. That's when we heard the sound from the garage, like someone moving something heavy, and Caitlin ran downstairs to check on her brother while I followed with my phone's flashlight. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to how we got there in the first place. It was a regular Thursday afternoon in October 1996. And Caitlin's parents had gone to a wedding reception about an hour away and weren't coming back until midnight. The three of us had been working on our biology presentation for 2 hours already, splitting up the work between research, writing, and finding pictures in the science books Caitlin's dad kept in the basement storage room. Caitlin's house was the kind where parents trusted you because you'd never given them a reason not to. We had pizza money, a list of numbers by the phone, and a reminder to keep doors locked. Normal stuff. I remember thinking how nice it was that we actually got work done when it was just us. No TV on, no music. Caitlin typed because her spelling was better than mine. I organized our notes, and Ethan was down there flipping through old textbooks because he liked finding the weird diagrams. We argued once about whether a picture was too gross for class, then went back to the schedule we'd made. Around 9, Caitlin's mom called to check in. Everything was fine. I even joked that we'd be asleep by 10. I meant it. I was 14 and boring and wanted an A. Then the house blinked off like someone hit a switch, and I heard Caitlin's chair scrape the hardwood downstairs. She called up to me. I said the block still had power, and we both waited for Ethan to complain about the dark. He didn't. Instead, there was this scrape from the garage, slow, like a heavy tote nudged across concrete. and my stomach did that drop that feels like missing a step. We had been working fine until the power cut, which didn't make sense because it wasn't storming and the streetlights were still on when I looked out the window. Caitlin and I found Ethan in the basement, and he told us he had heard a noise from the garage earlier, like someone was moving things around, but he figured it was just their cat knocking over boxes. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The interior door that connected the garage to the house was slightly open, maybe 3 or 4 inches. I was certain that door had been closed when we walked past it an hour earlier because I remembered Caitlin shutting it after she grabbed sodas from the garage fridge. Caitlin grabbed her brother's hand and whispered that we needed to go upstairs and call her parents, but that's when we heard it clearly. Heavy breathing and slow footsteps coming from inside the garage. Ethan wanted to look and see who it was, but I held his arm and we quietly made our way up the stairs to the living room. Caitlin's hands were shaking as she dialed her mom's number on the cordless phone, and we heard the door from the garage slowly creak open wider. I didn't say hello when the call connected. I said, "Don't hang up." Caitlin told her mom the power was out and somebody was in the garage. Her mom started to answer, then the line went dead. Battery or base station or who knows. The dial tone just vanished. We stood there, and I could hear Ethan breathing too fast. I told him to keep his shoes on, just in case we had to leave. He nodded like he understood exactly what I meant. We moved toward the front hall in a tight little group, not because we were brave, but because none of us wanted to be the one stuck at the back if that door opened all the way. It did. The hinge noise was small, but we all heard it, and then a draft came up the hallway that smelled like cold dust and oil. I remember thinking about the windows. Neighbors across the street were home. They'd see us if we got outside. Caitlin reached for the deadbolt with her free hand and missed it once. I put my hand over hers and turned it. I told everyone to run for the front door, but Ethan froze, staring toward the kitchen where the garage door led. A tall man in a work jumpsuit stepped out of the darkness, and at first I didn't recognize him, but Caitlin gasped and said, "Mr. Harris?" It was their neighbor from across the street who sometimes helped her dad fix his car. He smiled and explained that he saw the lights go out and decided to check the breaker in the garage panel since he had a spare key to the garage that Caitlin's father had given him months ago. Caitlin nodded uncertainly, but I noticed the man was sweating even though it was cold outside, and he was holding something wrapped in a rag instead of a screwdriver or any tools. Ethan asked why Mr. Harris didn't ring the doorbell first, and the man paused for just a second too long before saying he didn't want to scare us by ringing in the dark. Caitlin said she would call her parents to let them know everything was fine, but Mr. Harris suddenly insisted we should come to the garage first so he could show us what he did with the breaker panel. There was something in his voice, an urgency that didn't match the situation, and I felt my heart start racing. I told Caitlin to dial 911 right then because something felt wrong, and before Mr. Harris could close the distance, headlights cut across the front window. Caitlin's dad had forgotten some documents and pulled back into the driveway. Mr. Harris stopped, turned without a word, and moved fast through the kitchen to the garage. We heard the interior door shut. The front lock turned and Caitlin's dad stepped in with his keys still in his hand. Caitlin told him the power died, the street still had lights, and Mr. Harris came in from the garage saying he was checking the breaker. Her dad went to the main panel and flipped the big switch. The house came back. He said, flat, that the breaker was fine. He looked at our faces and understood. "Where is he now?" I said, "Garage or outside." He called the police and kept the dispatcher on. He locked the front, the back slider, and the interior garage door, then stood where he could see the hall and kitchen. Caitlin tried her mom again, but he told her to hang up and keep the line free. We didn't hear any more movement from the garage. The officers arrived in about 15 minutes. One checked the garage from outside while two went across the street to Mr. Harris's house. We watched from the window because Caitlin's dad told us not to open the door for anyone but police. Mr. Harris opened after a pause and started talking right away. Later, the officers told us his story. He saw our lights go out, wanted to help, had a spare key to the garage that Caitlin's dad had given him months ago. And when he heard the dad come home, he left because he felt embarrassed for barging in. They asked him for the rag he had been carrying. He handed it over. Inside was duct tape, rope, and a box cutter. No tools for a breaker. The officers brought the bag to our porch and asked if Caitlin's dad had ever given Mr. Harris a key. No, never, he said. He added that Mr. Harris sometimes helped with the car, but never had access to the house or garage. An officer came back a few minutes later and said Mr. Harris had been laid off from construction 3 months ago and had gambling debts. Based on what he told them, his plan was to rob the house knowing the parents were out, and if we got in the way, he'd lock us in the basement until he finished. My legs felt hollow hearing it said like that. They cuffed Mr. Harris and put him in the cruiser. We gave statements at the kitchen table. The officers left a card with a case number and told Caitlin's dad he did the right thing by calling and not confronting him. After they left, he checked every lock and called my parents to come pick me up. We were quiet, listening for footsteps that weren't there. He pled out later. The police arrested him that night and he eventually took a plea deal. 3 years probation for criminal trespass and attempted burglary since they couldn't prove he intended to hurt anyone. I still think about the spare key story and how I didn't question it, since our families weren't close. Caitlin told me she almost followed him into the garage because he was a neighbor, an adult, someone our parents waved to. It felt rude to push back. That's what scares me most now that I'm older. How near we came to doing exactly what he wanted because we were raised to be polite and to trust faces we recognized. If Caitlin's dad hadn't forgotten those papers and driven back at that minute, I don't know how that night ends. I wish I had made us run out the front door the second we heard those footsteps, instead of waiting to see who it was. During my sophomore year, I worked the night shift at a 24-hour laundromat on the edge of the student district. It was perfect for picking up extra cash while doing homework between customers. Midnight to 6. I'd average 5 or 6 people unless it rained and the dryers got popular. Mostly taxi drivers, night nurses, a janitor from the hospital, sometimes a student with a laptop and a bag of quarters. My job was easy. Keep the drums from jamming, refill the soap machine, make change, mop anything that spilled. The day guy left at 11 with a nod and a good luck, kid. And then it was just me and the hum of machines until the morning person arrived. Being alone didn't bother me at first. I liked the quiet and the free Wi-Fi. I liked that I could make flashcards on the counter. Little things nagged though. The back storage door stuck and needed a hard shove. The deadbolt on the front door only half caught unless you lifted while turning. And every couple weeks someone called to ask if our cameras actually recorded or were just for show. We had 2 working angles and a blind spot by the back. I told myself I was overthinking. It was a laundromat, not a bank. Still, when the last bus passed and the street got empty, I'd keep the counter stool angled so I could watch the door without twisting my neck. It was a Thursday around 3 in the morning when this guy came in with a big gym bag. Mid-40s maybe, ball cap, windbreaker. He didn't feel off at first. He loaded 3 washers, fed them quarters, bought a box of detergent, everything normal. While his stuff was washing, he sat in a plastic chair by the window and scrolled his phone, legs jittering. I was behind the counter fighting through some econ problems and half paying attention to the dryers making that change rattle sound they do when someone leaves a penny in a pocket. About 30 minutes later, he came up and said one of the machines wasn't switching to the spin cycle. I told him it happens when the lid sensor sticks, and walked over with the little key to pop the panel. I bent down to check the control board. It was loud there, metal on metal, stupid place to talk. That's when I felt his hand clamp my shoulder, and then my jacket near the collar. He yanked sideways, hard, angling me into that narrow space between the machines toward the back door. It wasn't a mugging grab, not a give me your till thing. It was a drag. I shoved back and hit metal with my hip. He said, not loud, "Come on, man," like we knew each other. We didn't. For a second I froze, thinking maybe he wanted the change box, but his grip wasn't on my hands. It was just pulling me, quick and efficient, toward the storage room. I planted my feet against one of the machines and yelled, but he was stronger and kept dragging me backward. My heel slipped on a detergent drip, and I lost the leverage I'd been using against the washer's rubber foot. I felt the back of my jacket start to lift over my shoulders. The front door opened, and an elderly woman walked in carrying a laundry basket. She looked at us for half a second, just long enough to understand, and started screaming. The guy let go of me like I was on fire and bolted for the exit, shoulder checking the door so hard it banged the wall. He blew past the woman, almost took her down, and sprinted into the street. I braced my hands on the top of the machine and tried to steady my breathing. The woman set her basket on the floor and got between me and the door, like she was guarding me from round two. "Are you hurt?" she asked. I said, I think I'm okay," which sounded stupid even to me. She took out her phone with these small, quick movements and dialed 911. "There was an attempted assault at the laundromat," she told them. She wanted to know if I could lock the door, so I slid the bolt and set the bar even though my hands didn't want to do anything precise. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't keep the key steady on the hook when I tried to put it back. It clanged on the floor and I left it there. She asked my name and if I needed to sit. I said my name, or tried to, and leaned against the counter instead. She kept her phone on speaker so I could hear the dispatcher ask questions I couldn't answer. She stayed with me and kept asking if I was okay while we waited. I could hear her voice but couldn't really process what she was saying because my brain was still catching up to what just happened. The police showed up about 15 minutes later. 2 uniforms first, then a third, who seemed like the one in charge. The elderly woman stayed beside me until they walked in, then moved to a chair and folded her hands like she didn't want to be in the way. I gave them water from the little staff fridge because my brain needed a task. They asked me to start from the beginning. I stuck to facts. Time, his entry, 3 washers, the phone scrolling, the complaint about the spin cycle, the grab, the pull toward the back. I told them he was average height, dark hair, gray hoodie, jeans, sneakers. One of them said, "Not the windbreaker?" And I said the hoodie was under it, I think. He had the hood up when he came in, then down while he sat, then up again when he ran. I felt stupid about how uncertain I sounded, like I'd watched a blurry video inside my head and kept pausing at the wrong moments. They asked about cameras. I showed them the 2 angles. One covered the counter and the door. The other got the row of washers but left a blind strip by the back. "Of course," one officer muttered. Not at me, just at the situation. The footage caught his face for maybe a second when he pushed the door open on his way out. Hood shadowed it, but you could see the jawline, a side glance. They pulled the SD card and logged it. They got the woman's statement too. She described him as quick and decisive, which felt accurate. When they asked her name, she gave a first name and a last initial. She said she'd stick around if that helped. It did. They canvassed the block. The sergeant told me not to open the door for anyone until they came back. 15 minutes later, they returned with the gym bag. He'd left it under the folding table like a bookmark. Inside were clothes that didn't match a man his size. Women's jeans, kids' shirts, some towels, nothing expensive. There were also documents. A photocopy of an ID with a name that didn't sound real, and a prepaid phone box with the SIM removed. One officer flipped the paper, checked the edges with a fingertip, then shook his head. "Fake," he said. "Cheap fake." Dispatch pinged them about a camera 2 storefronts down. They went to ask for that footage. Nothing useful. He'd cut across a side street and disappeared into dark glass. The sergeant said they'd run the stills against other cases. He didn't promise anything. He looked at me and said, he chose a place with low foot traffic and a back room, then brought a bag he could ditch. He's done this before or thought hard about it. He gave me a card and said if I remembered anything, even something small, to call. I asked if leaving the bag meant he'd be back. He said no. Guys like that don't circle back to the same risk. I asked about my shift. He said finish the night if I felt up to it. But if not, they could have someone come lock up. I said I could finish. That sounded like control, and I needed that. They left around 5. The elderly woman squeezed my arm, told me she'd be praying for me, and slipped out when a patrol car idled out front. I kept the bolt on and let people in one at a time for the last hour. The morning person came early after the sergeant called the owner. We watched the sun push a little light across the tile and didn't talk much. The police called me twice that week, then once the week after, with follow-up questions. They asked if anyone had been hanging around in prior nights, if I'd seen similar gym bags, if any customers made me uneasy. I told them about the weird phone calls about cameras, and they wrote that down. Then the calls stopped. I wrote my resignation the next morning after I'd slept a little and stopped shaking. The owner met me in the office and said he was sorry, said he could put me on a day shift with a partner, maybe raise my rate a bit, put a panic button by the counter. I believed he meant it. I also believed the next quiet night would freeze me up, or worse, numb me again. I worked one more week on days, place packed, machines full, no empty corners, then turned in my key. Months later, I moved across town. Sometimes the bus route cuts past that block and I see the laundromat windows lit up and the same "Open 24 hours" sign humming, and I keep my eyes on the traffic light. The police kept the case open for a while. A detective called once to ask if I'd look at a photo lineup, but nothing matched cleanly, and then it went quiet. I still think about the elderly woman who walked in at the exact second I needed someone to exist. I never got her full name. I never saw her again. I think about the gym bag and the fake name, and whether he tried the same approach somewhere else with a clerk who didn't have a witness stumble in. I don't go inside that laundromat. If the bus stops there, I wait with my hands on my backpack straps and watch the door from the curb until it closes. During my junior year of college, I used to study late at the university library almost every night. I was pre-med, and the workload was brutal, especially organic chemistry, which basically required me to live in the science library. That March, I was deep into exam prep, and I'd stay until the library closed at 11 p.m. most weeknights. My dorm was about a 20-minute walk across campus, but it was raining hard that Wednesday night. So I pulled out my phone and requested a city ride. Most students use that app instead of traditional taxis because it was cheaper. The car showed up in under 5 minutes, a black Nissan Altima with this bright blue LED underglow lighting, which I thought was kind of tacky, but whatever. The driver was an older guy, maybe 50, wearing a baseball cap and a hoodie, with earbuds hanging around his neck. He leaned over to unlock the back door and said, "For Matt?" I said yeah, and slid in, backpack on my lap so it wouldn't soak the seat. He had a clean dash, but there were fast food napkins shoved into the door pocket and a phone mount with the root up. I noticed his eyes in the rear view for a split second, just a quick check, and then we pulled off the curb. The app route matched what I knew by heart. Cut along the stadium, past the art center, East Gate, done. I remember thinking that the underglow reflection in the puddles made the ride feel like some dumb car commercial. The first few minutes of the ride were quiet. He had some low music playing and I just stared out the window at the rain. Then he started making conversation, asking me what I was studying at the library. I told him organic chemistry, and he asked follow-up questions about my major, which seemed normal enough at first. But then the questions got more specific and weird. He asked which dorm building I lived in, and I gave a vague answer, just said it was on the east side of campus. He asked if I had roommates, how many people I lived with. He wanted to know if I was at the library every Wednesday night, if I had a regular schedule. Each question individually might have seemed innocent, but altogether it felt like he was gathering information, like he was making a profile of me. I tried to make it feel boring. I told him I switched spots a lot, sometimes crashed at a friend's if it got late. He kept going. "You walk home usually?" he asked, eyes bouncing from the road to the mirror. I shrugged. "Depends on the weather." He chuckled, like he was being friendly. "Campus feels safe, right?" I said, "Yeah, mostly," and changed the subject by asking if City Ride had been busy with the rain. He answered, then circled back. "What time do you usually finish up?" 11? Midnight? I gave a non-answer. All over the place, and went back to the window. He started naming dorms like he was guessing. East Side, Hawthorne, Wilcox? Those the ones? I said, "I don't know. I'm bad with names," which was obviously not true, but I wasn't handing him a map to my door. His questions weren't rapid fire, just spaced out enough to feel casual. He'd toss one out, let the wipers do their back and forth, then toss another. I could feel my shoulders tensing. It wasn't panic, just that tight internal shift where your brain moves from normal to alert. A light turned red and we stopped. He adjusted the heater, then said, almost like a joke, "You don't have a boyfriend coming out to walk you, huh?" I said, "My friends and I switch off," which again was vague and technically true sometimes. He nodded, hummed along to the music, then said, "Good. It's smart having someone meet you." The way he said "good" made me want out of the car faster than the rain made me want to stay. I started giving shorter answers, being deliberately vague, hoping he'd take the hint and drop it. He didn't. He kept asking questions about whether I walked home alone usually, whether I had friends who also studied late. Every time I answered, he'd glance at me in the rearview mirror, and his look was intense, studying me. The ride should have taken 15 minutes, but we were only about 8 minutes in, and I was getting seriously uncomfortable. I didn't want this guy to know exactly where I lived or when I'd be walking alone at night. I made a quick decision and pulled out my phone, pretending to look at a text. I told him my roommate had just messaged me and I needed to stop at the convenience store to pick something up for him. I asked if he could drop me at the 7-Eleven that was a few blocks from campus. He looked at the route and said, "That's off the app drop-off." I said I could change the destination, thumbs tapping the screen like I was doing it right then. I added, "He's sick. He needs Pedialyte. I can walk the rest." I was calm on purpose. People push back less when you sound certain and boring. He hesitated, then said, "Yeah, okay, 7-Eleven's fine." We rolled past the stadium turn. I watched the little blue arrow move on his screen. He asked, "Which one?" "There's the one near East Gate, and the one by the gas station," I said. "East Gate, because it sat on a corner with good lighting and cameras. I also knew there were always other students grabbing snacks, even late." He nodded and turned on his blinker. The questions slowed. He started talking about how students didn't tip well on rainy nights, not angry. More like he wanted a reaction. I made a polite noise and kept my eyes on the street signs. I was counting lights, counting options. If he missed the next turn, I was going to hit the emergency icon in the app and say, loudly, "Here is fine." I rehearsed it in my head like a line. We hit the next intersection. He made the correct turn. I could see the 7-Eleven sign through the rain, glowing and obvious. My phone buzzed. Probably just some group chat, but I didn't check it. I sat forward a little so he'd know I was getting out. He said, "You sure you don't want me to take you to your dorm after?" I said, "I'm good, thanks." The car slowed at the curb. He put on his hazards. I unbuckled, opened the door, and stepped out into the rain. The driver went quiet for a second, just kept driving, and I thought maybe he hadn't heard me. I was about to repeat it when he finally responded, kind of reluctantly, that sure, he could stop there. He pulled into the 7-Eleven parking lot and I got out quickly, thanking him and closing the door. The Altima drove off and I stood by the entrance, watching until I was sure he was gone. My heart was pounding, and I felt stupid for maybe overreacting, but something about that whole interaction had felt wrong. I went inside the store and grabbed a random bottle of water, then waited about 5 minutes to make sure he wasn't circling back. Through the window, I didn't see the Altima anywhere on the street. I opened the City Ride app and requested a new ride, this time to my actual dorm. A different driver accepted, a woman in her 20s who looked like a grad student, and she showed up in a silver Honda. She rolled the passenger window down 2 inches, said my name, and I got in. She confirmed the PIN. I told her to drop me on the side street near Westridge, and that I'd walk the rest. She just said, "Okay," and pulled out of the lot. The quiet helped. I sent a message in our group chat with the car make and plate and a quick, "on the way." She didn't ask questions, just drove, and I watched the mirrors out of habit. No blue underglow behind us. Still, my leg bounced until we hit the east side of campus. She asked, "Here or next?" And I said, "Next, by the mailroom," angling myself toward the side path. It was still pouring, but a short run was better than a direct drop where someone could clock my exact door. We turned, passed the main lot, and slowed near the curb. She said, "Good luck with your studies," in a tired voice, and I thanked her and got out. This driver didn't talk at all except to confirm my destination, which was a relief. When we got close to my dorm, Westridge Hall, I told her to let me out on the side street instead of the main entrance, making up something about it being easier to get in that way. She didn't question it, just pulled over where I asked. I thanked her and got out, and as I crossed the street toward the dorm, I looked toward the main entrance out of habit. My stomach dropped. The black Nissan Altima with the blue underglow was parked in the lot directly in front of Westridge Hall, about 50 yards away. The driver was sitting inside, the light from his phone on his face as he stared at the building. I changed direction immediately and walked quickly toward the neighboring dorm, Norton Hall, where my friend lived. I used his spare key card from earlier in the week to get in through the side entrance. Once inside, I called campus security and explained that a City Ride driver had dropped me at a store and then showed up outside my dorm. The dispatcher said an officer would check it out right away. I waited in the lobby where I could see the lot without standing right at the glass. A few minutes later, a campus security SUV pulled in and parked behind the Altima. The officer walked up to the driver's window. The guy rolled it down and they talked. I couldn't hear details, but I saw the driver showing his phone and gesturing down the street, like he was waiting for someone else. After a bit, the officer stepped back and the Altima pulled away. The security officer came into Norton Hall and took my statement. He said the driver claimed he was just checking his next pickup and didn't realize it was my dorm, which sounded weak. I asked if he showed an active ride, and the officer said no, just a map screen, and that they couldn't do more unless he trespassed or someone was threatened. He told me to call again if I saw the car. I filed a complaint through the app with the driver's info and the timeline. I got an automated "we'll investigate" email and nothing else. For the next few weeks, I started getting careful. I set destinations to the coffee shop or the bookstore and walked the last short stretch. I shared every ride in our group chat and made everyone else share theirs. A friend admitted a driver once asked to save her address to make pickups faster, and she said no, but never reported it because nothing happened. We started comparing names and car details. I kept my backpack in front of me, waited inside, and split rides when I could. I ran into the same officer later. He said they added extra patrols at closing time. I never saw that blue underglow again, but I still looked for it every night. About 3 years ago, my friend Carol and I planned a weekend in Sedona for hiking. We both worked nights at the hospital, doubles piled on doubles, and we finally lined up 3 days off in a row. We were so punchy from lack of sleep we started shopping for places at 3 a.m., laughing at weird listings and then stopping dead at one that looked perfect. Clean white walls, bright windows, nothing cluttered. $60 a night, half the price of the hotels. The owner, Frank, messaged that the keypad lock was broken, but he'd meet us at 2 p.m. No big deal. We left Phoenix late morning with coffee and the kind of relief that makes you chatty about nothing. Trail maps, snacks, who was going to finally sleep through the night. We pulled up right on time, the red rock views doing that thing where you exhale without trying. I remember thinking, we nailed it. Easy weekend, low effort. Just the woods, our boots, and no call lights. Frank was waiting on the porch. Mid-50s, friendly smile, pressed polo, the kind of guy you expect to see at a hardware store giving advice about grout. He shook our hands and said, "Sorry about the lock, ladies. Supply chain, you know." Then he opened the door and we got hit with a sharp chemical smell. Not lemon cleaner. Heavy, like someone sprayed a whole can of something and shut the place up. The hallway was dim even with daylight. I saw paint flaking near the baseboards and what looked like old water stains on the ceiling, yellow rings overlapping like old coffee cups. Frank kept up the patter, best trails, where to park, while moving fast, like if we didn't stop, we wouldn't look. He showed us the first floor room. It was nothing like the photos. The bedding was supposed to be white, but came off gray, with a few darker smudges that hadn't come out in a wash. The pillows were flat and lumpy. I sat on the edge of the mattress and felt one corner sink more than the other so hard it tilted me sideways. Carol opened the closet to hang her jacket and something dropped, light, dry, a papery thud. It was a dead mouse, dried out, little feet curled. She yelped. I swallowed hard. It was the kind of moment at work where you switch to problem mode, except this wasn't work, and it was where we were supposed to sleep. Frank saw our faces and started talking fast. Old house. Happens once in a while. Exterminator was just here this week, hence the spray. Cleaning lady's coming in an hour, she'll redo everything. Sheets, the whole nine. I can comp you a bit if that helps. He sounded practiced, like we weren't his first complaint. I glanced at Carol. She gave that polite smile you give families when you're delivering bad news on nights. Soft voice, no blame. We both felt weird about bailing right then. It's that social thing, like you don't want to be the difficult one, and it's 2 p.m. in a town you don't know. Okay, I said. If it's getting cleaned, we'll give it a minute. He brightened. Perfect. I'm upstairs if you need me. Kitchen's all yours. When he left, we just stood there. Carol nudged a pillow with one knuckle. I'm not putting my face on that, she muttered. I said we could at least go get food and give the cleaner time, and we'd reassess after. Logical, controlled. We changed shoes, grabbed our wallets, and headed for the front door. To get there, we had to pass through the kitchen. You know when something clicks and a picture gets sharper? It was like that. From the hall, the kitchen looked normal enough. White cabinets, a little table. Up close, it changed. The counter had sticky rings like jars had sat there for weeks. The dish rack held plates with a dull film, and one had a smear like tomato that hadn't been scrubbed. The sink had a slow puddle around the drain with a few floating coffee grounds and something stringy I didn't want to name. Above the trash can, the wall had a dark fan-shaped stain. The fridge hummed loud and uneven, like it was struggling. Carol tried the handle. Inside, a baking sheet with foil sat on the top shelf. A grayish residue baked onto it. Next to it, a gallon of milk with yesterday's date and a swollen cap. The crisper drawer was cracked open with a plastic bag of lettuce gone to mush. The smell from the fridge layered under the chemical spray and came back around the edges. I opened a lower cabinet to check for a clean pan. Roach traps all along the back. A few were flipped, and one had legs stuck in the glue. Not moving. I felt that same work reflex. Catalog, plan, fix. But this wasn't my job. Carol touched the stovetop with 2 fingers, pulled back, and showed me brown grease on her skin. She whispered, "He said someone's coming in an hour? To fix all this?" It wasn't sarcasm, more like she needed the words to line up that didn't. Footsteps creaked above us, slow, then a door shut. Maybe Frank. Maybe someone else. I realized we hadn't asked if anyone else was staying downstairs. We hadn't asked anything, really. We'd been too polite. I pictured us coming back after dark, exhausted, deciding it was fine for one night because we didn't want to drive back to Phoenix and didn't want to argue with a stranger on his property. I pictured waking up and finding more we didn't want to see. That felt like how people get themselves stuck. Reasonable steps that add up. "We should go," I said. Carol looked at the back door, then the front, like measuring distance. "Yeah," she said. We started for the front hall together. As we reached the doorway, Carol grabbed my arm, and I knew she was thinking the same thing I was. On the kitchen table were the remains of someone's meal. A plate with dried pasta sat next to an open jar of sauce with mold around the edges. Not just a speck, but a full ring. The sink was stacked with bowls and glasses sunk in gray water. From under the refrigerator came a sweet, rotten smell, like fruit forgotten in a car. On the windowsill, a sticky fly trap hung crowded with flies, some still shifting. By the door, someone's dirty sneakers lay on their sides, stained on the laces. Carol nudged me and nodded at the wall. A large wet stain had spread there with dark edges, obvious mold. That was enough. We went straight back to the room without talking. I grabbed my bag and checked the zipper, then checked again because my hands were shaking a little, which annoyed me. Carol said, "Phone and charger?" I patted my pocket, grabbed the charger from the outlet, and stuffed it in. We didn't bother putting anything back the way we found it. We didn't text Frank or apologize or explain. He knew what the place looked like. We walked out fast and kept our eyes forward. No lingering in the hall, no looking back at the kitchen, no waiting for someone to stop us. We were already done. In the car, we opened our phones at the same time. "Hotels," I said, and she said, "Already on it." Weekend rates were brutal, and most things were sold out. I watched the house while she scrolled. A curtain upstairs shifted. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was Frank. I turned the engine on so we could leave if he came out. Carol read off 3 places, all overpriced. Pick the one that actually has a room, I said. She booked the cheapest option, and I pulled away from the curb before the confirmation email even hit. 10 minutes later, we were under a bright hotel sign. The lobby smelled normal, neutral. We checked in fast and locked the door behind us. We both stood there for a second and then let out a breath, and it felt ridiculous how much better 4 walls and a deadbolt made me feel. We started listing what we saw like we were charting a patient. Flies, stain, smell, dishes, mold, the sneakers. Not his size, Carol said again, and that stuck in my head. I drafted a short message in the app. We're leaving due to cleanliness issues. Please cancel remaining nights, and hit send. It showed red. No reply. Fine. We ate takeout on the bed and I washed my hands twice before I could finish a sandwich. The plan shifted to hike tomorrow, extend this reservation if possible, and don't waste more time on anything else. Before lights out, Carol asked if he knew, like actually knew how bad it was. I said I didn't know, but the cleaning lady in an hour sounded like a line. We left the TV on low and tried to sleep. The only available room cost $130 a night, but we had no choice. We paid for both the failed rental and the hotel, $250 in losses for one night. It was a lesson. Low price and nice photos don't guarantee anything, especially if there are no reviews at all. Later, we checked Frank's profile again. After our visit, 4 negative reviews appeared mentioning dirt, insects, and smell, basically a copy of what we saw. Apparently, we weren't the first to encounter it, but at the time of booking, there weren't any reviews yet, just the clean photos. Now I won't book anywhere without at least 5 verified reviews, even if it costs more. Carol and I joke about it now. Check the closets. But we were genuinely creeped out then. The dead mouse falling out of the closet still shows up in my nightmares sometimes. Way back when I was 17, I lived with my mom in a small 2-story apartment on the 2nd floor of an apartment building in the suburbs. Mom worked as a nurse on nights, so 3 or 4 times a week I was alone from evening till morning. Dad left when I was 9. My brother was at a military college out of state, so quiet didn't bother me much. That evening around 8, I was at my desk working on a history paper. Mom left at 7, said she'd be back at 6, and told me there was lasagna in the fridge. My door was open, the hallway light was on, and downstairs the TV was running for background noise. Around 8:30, I heard the front door downstairs open and close. I sat up. Our locks are loud. The sound fit. I waited for keys in the bowl, or Mom calling that she forgot something. Nothing. Just the TV and the fridge hum. I told myself it could have been a neighbor's door echoing through the stairwell and kept typing. The paper was due on Monday, no extensions. A couple minutes later, I heard a softer close. I paused again, listened, and got nothing. I didn't go check. I was trying not to be dramatic about sounds in an old building. I forced my brain back to reconstruction and wrote 2 clunky sentences. Then Mom's voice came from below, from the entryway. "Liv, can you come down? I need help with bags." Same cadence, same tired smile I could hear in it. It was odd because she'd left an hour earlier, but she's turned back before for her badge. I got up and went downstairs, calling, "Coming, Mom. What happened?" No answer. At the bottom, I saw the front door exactly how I'd left it. Both locks set. The entryway was empty. No bags, no shoes, nothing disturbed. I checked the peephole, then unbolted and opened the door. The common hallway was empty too. The elevator panel showed one. I watched for a few seconds. No movement. A TV murmured behind a neighbor's door. That was it. I relocked both locks and went upstairs feeling stupid and uneasy. The voice had been Mom's, the exact way she says my name when she's tired. Back at my desk, I tried to work, but my eyes stuck to the last line I'd written and wouldn't move. About half an hour later came a quick sound from the upstairs bathroom, like the tap turned on and off. I hadn't gotten up in the last 40 minutes. I stood and walked down the hall because ignoring it wouldn't help me sleep. The bathroom door was ajar, the light on because I always leave it on. The sink was dry. But on the mirror above it was a wet handprint, clear and fresh, like someone had pressed a damp hand and lifted it. Drops were sliding down. My heart kicked. I live here with Mom. I hadn't touched that mirror in 2 days. I started checking rooms. My room, empty. Mom's, empty. Guest room, boxes and a folded treadmill. Nothing moved. I checked the windows, all latched. I pulled the shower curtain even though I knew I'd have seen feet. Nothing. I went downstairs and sat on the living room couch with my phone in my hand and the TV low. I typed, "Are you home?" to Mom and erased it because I didn't want her panicking at work. I drafted a text to my brother and deleted that too because he'd call me jumpy. I told myself I'd eat the lasagna and then go back upstairs. I didn't touch it. The next hours came in jumps. A creak above me like someone shifting weight by the landing. Then nothing. A little click from the kitchen like a jar lid settling. Then nothing. I raised the TV a notch and locked the living room windows again, even though I already knew they were locked. Twice I walked to the bottom step and just stood there listening to an empty stairwell. Near 11 something popped upstairs, clean and sharp, and I flinched hard enough to drop the remote. I went to the stairwell and said, "Hello?" because not saying anything felt worse. No answer. I checked the back door's chain. I checked it again. The deadbolt was already set. I touched it anyway. Close to midnight, I heard a low whisper from the kitchen, the kind of breathy murmur people use on the phone when they don't want to wake someone. No words, just sound. I walked in with my phone light on, opened the pantry, nudged the trash bin with my foot, bent to look under the table, and it was empty. Once I thought someone stood in my doorway, a dark shape leaning on the frame like they were waiting for me to notice. I turned fast, and it was nothing, just the lamp throwing a weird shadow across the hall. I didn't call Mom at work. She'd tell me I was overworked and send the neighbor to knock, and I didn't want a whole thing in the middle of the night. At 3 in the morning, I finally gave up and went to bed. I lay there with my eyes open, counting the slow minutes until the traffic outside started again. In the morning, Mom came back and everything was normal. Coffee, scrubs, quick hug, the same as always. I didn't tell her about any of it. I just said school was fine and pretended to be late so I could leave first. A few months later, the same kind of nights started repeating. Voices where there shouldn't be voices, just my name said in a familiar tone from the wrong direction. Movements at the edge of my vision that disappeared when I looked straight at them. Little changes at home. Keys on the wrong hook. A mug left on the counter I didn't remember using. I made a list of every ordinary explanation I could think of and crossed most of them off. I booked a regular doctor because if this was going to keep happening, I wanted to rule out anything obvious. She listened, checked the basics, and referred me to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist sat with me for over an hour and went through questions that felt like they were trying to poke holes in my version of reality. I answered as simply as I could. He asked about stress, sleep, trauma, substances, family history. He had me do memory and focus tests. At the end, He said my symptoms didn't fit the classic picture of schizophrenia or psychosis. No fixed false beliefs, no paranoia, no disorganized thinking. He wrote it down as isolated sensory phenomena of unclear cause. Not satisfying, but at least it wasn't a label I couldn't shake. He recommended I keep a diary. Write what you ate, how much you slept, what was going on that day. When it happens, what time, what you were doing, don't chase it, just record. So I did. I made a rule. Short entries only, no overanalyzing at 2 a.m. I logged nights with nothing and nights with too much. I logged arguments with mom, tests at school, the weeks I ate garbage and the weeks I pretended to be healthy. I kept it boring on purpose so the patterns, if there were any, could stand out. For a while, the act of writing helped because it felt like control. I didn't change my routines beyond that. I still used the same lamp. I still left the TV on. I've been keeping that diary for 5 years now. During that time, I heard Mom's voice 4 more times, always the same tired sound of her asking for something simple, like, "Can you grab me a glass?" even when she wasn't home. I saw dark figures standing in doorways that vanished when I blinked. Once I felt a hand touch my shoulder while I was alone, quick and firm, like someone trying to get my attention without scaring me, and I froze so hard my neck ached the next day. I wrote each one down. Date, time, what I was doing, what I'd eaten, how I slept, how long it lasted. No drama, just facts. The episodes are irregular. Sometimes months pass, and I think it's over. And then I'll get 2 things in 1 week and feel stupid for believing that. I brought everything to doctors, blood work, scans, nothing. "Your brain looks fine," one specialist said, and then shrugged. Another called it benign perceptual events, and told me lots of people have them and never tell anyone. A third said, "Sometimes the brain creates artifacts under stress," and I wanted to ask him if he ever heard his mother call him from an empty house, but I let it go. I learned what not to say at work. If I started with, "I sometimes hear my name when no one's there," people smiled the way you smile at a loose dog and took a step back. So I stopped telling anyone except the 2 doctors and, once, my brother, who told me to get a camera, then realized how that sounded and apologized. I keep location sharing on with Mom. If I hear her voice, I check my phone first. If the dot isn't at home or nearby, I don't answer out loud. I wait until I'm sure the room is empty, and then I move. The uncertainty is the worst part. I can live with a weird brain if that's all it is. What gets me is not knowing if it's medical, psychological, or something I'll never get a straight explanation for. I function. I work. I sleep most nights. I've adapted to the possibility that now and then I will hear something that isn't there, and I will have to decide how to respond without making a scene. I've learned to live with it, but I still get that cold feeling down my spine when I hear my name called from an empty room. Last year in March, my internet kept dropping every few hours, so I called Comcast to send a technician. I work freelance from home in Seattle, so a stable connection isn't just nice, it's how I pay rent. They booked me for Tuesday at 10. Right on time, a guy about mid-40s showed up, thinning hair, worn work uniform with the Comcast logo, ID badge clipped to his chest. He introduced himself as Douglas, held up the badge for a second, and I let him in. He went straight to the living room router, crouched by the console table, started tracing cables and checking the lights. I sat at the kitchen counter with my laptop, trying to stay on task, answering emails before a noon deadline. Every few minutes he asked something normal, signal strength, when exactly the drops happened, whether it cut across Wi-Fi and Ethernet. I answered and kept typing. It was all routine, professional. Then the questions changed. "So you work from home full-time?" he asked while unplugging and replugging a Coax line. "Yeah, mostly," I said, eyes on my screen. I kept my tone neutral. It was true enough. "Do you live alone or with roommates?" That one made me pause. My hands hovered over the keyboard. "With a roommate," I lied. My voice came out flat. "In reality, it's just me." "What's your usual schedule? When are you home?" That felt off. Too specific. I kept it short. "It varies." He nodded like that made sense, but he started looking around more than the job seemed to require. His gaze paused on the photos on the window shelf. My family, a friend's wedding, then down over the mail I hadn't sorted on the side table. He looked down the hall and through my bedroom door, which was open a little, longer than a glance. I opened a fresh email and pretended to read it. "Do you have a security system?" he said. "Yes." Another lie. "I've got a decent deadbolt and that's it." He just said good, like he approved, and went back to the router. While he worked, I checked the appointment confirmation again, like that would help. It had the right order number, the right time window. He had the badge, the van out front, the tools. Everything legit. But the personal questions stuck. I don't love confrontation, and I couldn't think of a normal reason to push back without making it weird. I told myself maybe they trained them to ask about equipment tied to alarms or cameras. It felt thin, but I took the excuse anyway. I kept moving my coffee cup closer to the edge of the counter so I had an excuse to stand and watch him if I wanted. He ran a speed test on his tablet and wrote numbers on a work slip. If he noticed me hovering, he didn't say anything. He asked what kind of work I do. I said freelance design, which is true, and he followed up. Websites or logos? Like he cared, which I doubted. He spent about 40 minutes on everything. He said he'd swapped a couple of connectors and restarted the router, and that I should be solid now. He handed me a carbon copy of the work order and asked if I could rate him in the Comcast app. I said sure, and put the slip near my keyboard. Then he slowed down. He took his time zipping tool pockets, pairing up cables with Velcro, wiping dust from a panel like he was killing seconds. I answered his small talk, short and polite, hoping the hint landed. It didn't. When he finally closed his bag, he walked to the door. "Have a nice day," he said with a smile that didn't match the rest of him. I opened the door, said, "You too," and watched him step into the hall. I shut the door behind him, turned the deadbolt, then just stood there with my palm on the wood. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I felt silly doing it, but I did it anyway. Something in his questions crawled under my skin. Nothing I could point to as a rule violation. A lot of people are just nosy, and maybe he was making conversation. But the way his eyes moved around my space, how he lingered on the bedroom doorway, the exact way he asked about my schedule, those details stuck there like burrs. I told myself I was making it bigger than it was. I've got a tendency to run worst-case scenarios in my head when I'm stressed. The month had already been tight, and losing the internet on client calls had been a whole thing. I didn't want another problem to stew on. I walked the short loop of the apartment, bedroom, bathroom, back to the kitchen, half checking nothing was out of place. I peeked through the peephole. The hall looked empty. I double-checked the lock anyway. Then I went back to the counter, opened the app, marked the service as complete, and skipped the star rating because the thought of typing anything about him made me feel weird. My email pinged. A client had sent over edits. I put the work slip under my notebook, clicked into the file, and told myself it was over. I pushed the feeling down and got back to the project, and after an hour of layout tweaks and a couple of calls, the edge wore off. By the end of the afternoon, the connection had held. No drops. I told myself that mattered more than anything else. I went back to work and forgot about it for a couple of days. On Thursday around 10, I was on the couch watching a show when I heard a knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the peephole and froze. Douglas, the same technician, stood in the hallway. No uniform, just a jacket. He knocked again. "Hello, it's me, the cable guy from Tuesday. I forgot to check one thing. It's important for connection stability. Can I come in for a minute?" My internet had been fine. Texts don't show up at 10 without a call anyway. I stayed quiet. He stared at the door and knocked harder. "I know you're home. I saw the light under the door. Please open up. This will take 5 minutes." His tone was too familiar. No tools, no work bag, just his phone. I stepped back so the floor wouldn't creak. He rapped his knuckles again. I pictured opening the door and couldn't do it. I backed away 2 more steps and kept listening. I went to the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911. I whispered that the internet tech from Tuesday had come back late, out of uniform, asking to come in, and I was alone. The dispatcher took my address and said a patrol was on the way. "Stay on the line. Do not open the door." He spoke again. "Rachel, I really need to check that router. It's a safety issue with the wiring." Hearing my name made it worse. He had it from the work order, but said like that it felt like pressure. I told the dispatcher he knew my name. "Officers are en route," she said. His footsteps moved away. I heard the elevator chime, then nothing. "Is he gone?" she asked. "I think so," I said. "I'm not opening the door." She stayed with me until a firm knock and a clear announcement. "Police." I set the chain, opened the door a few inches, and met 2 officers. Douglas was gone. I handed over the service slip with his name and ID and explained the appointment and his questions. They said they'd check the building and contact Comcast, told me not to open for anyone unannounced. After they left, I locked the door and didn't sleep much. The next morning I called Comcast and filed a complaint. I explained the late visit, no uniform, and the questions about my schedule and whether I lived alone. The rep apologized and opened a case. That afternoon I installed a chain on my door. I texted my neighbor across the hall to ask if she'd heard anything. She hadn't. I told her to call me if anyone asked for me. A week later, Comcast called back. The supervisor said Douglas had been terminated. It wasn't the first complaint. 2 other women had reported inappropriate behavior. They flagged my account for no unscheduled visits and said any tech would call from the company number before arriving. I wrote down the direct line and thanked them. Then I watched the door for a while, not sure if I felt safer or just more alert. I think about how close I came to opening the door because I didn't want to be rude. No scene and no heroics, just a boundary that had to hold. Now I don't open to anyone without a confirmed appointment and a call I can verify. I keep the chain on until I'm sure. I check the badge through the peephole and take my time. If something feels off, I treat it like it is. That pause is the difference I needed, and it's a habit I'm not breaking again. So this happened last summer when me and my best friend Mira convinced our parents we were mature enough to stay overnight at her family's rental lake house by ourselves. We were both 16, and the place was in one of those vacation communities that go dead after Labor Day. Her parents were fine with it but kept repeating the same stuff. Keep the doors locked, don't mess with the thermostat, neighbors are probably gone. We got there Friday evening with junk food and a laptop like we were going to college or something. The house looked bigger when it was just us. 2 floors, wraparound porch, those huge windows that make you feel like you're in a display case. It was cold inside from being empty. Mira dragged out a space heater, and we huddled under blankets, put on a dumb movie, and tried to pretend it was normal. I remember feeling weird about the big dark yard outside the glass, like we were on stage. I told myself I was being dramatic and kept my eyes on the screen. We joked, paused to argue about snacks. Typical. I texted my mom a picture, thumbs up, heater in the background, and she sent back, "Doors locked?" with about 9 question marks. We checked them again just to avoid the lecture later. Around 11, when we were shutting everything down, I stepped onto the porch to cool off because the space heater made it stuffy. That's when I saw a light in the window of the house next door. It was maybe 50 yards through the trees, and I could see a beam moving, slow and searching, like someone with a flashlight. I called Mira. She squinted and said, "Probably a last-minute weekend thing." But her parents had said it would be empty out here. That stuck in my head. We went back in, locked the door behind us, again. Did a quick sweep like we were being responsible. Then took our bags upstairs and decided to sleep in the same room. We'd left our phones charging in the kitchen because we didn't think we'd need them overnight. Stupid in hindsight, but it felt fine then. Lights out, talking a little, then quiet. Around 2, I woke up to a sound. Not the heater, not pipes. Floorboards. Downstairs. A slow step, then a pause like someone testing each one. I froze. When I nudged Mira, she was already awake. We just listened. Another creak. Pause. The pacing was careful, like whoever it was knew exactly how much weight to put down. Our phones were downstairs, and that detail went through my brain like a warning label. Mira whispered, "It could be the house settling." Then we heard a cough. Short, trying to be quiet. That killed the house settling theory, and I felt that horrible feeling where your stomach drops, but there's nowhere for it to go. Mira whispered, "We should climb out the window onto the porch roof and drop into the yard." In the dark. It was a long drop. If one of us got hurt, we'd be stuck out there with whoever was inside. The steps were near the front of the house, and we were toward the back, so I thought if we moved when they were on the opposite side, we could get downstairs fast, grab the phones, and bolt. I shook my head at the window plan, and she didn't argue. The creaking shifted, coming toward the staircase. Then that same cough, closer. We slid off the bed onto the floor. Mira grabbed my hand so tight my fingernails pressed into my palm. We crawled to the door, and I eased it open an inch. There was a faint light now, wandering and low, like a flashlight tucked in a sleeve. It moved across the upstairs landing. The footsteps stopped outside our door. We didn't breathe. Not exaggerating. I actually counted to keep myself from gasping. 10. 15. Nothing. Then the light drifted away, and the footsteps went down the hall toward the other bedroom. I pictured them opening closet doors, checking under beds. I knew that was our opening. If we waited, they'd come back and maybe try our knob. I leaned into Mira's ear. "Now," I mouthed, and she nodded. We moved on our knees, keeping low so the bed frame blocked us from the hallway's line of sight. My brain was doing math I didn't want. How far to the stairs, how loud the carpet would be, where the floor squeaked. I remembered a spot on the landing from earlier. Mira had tripped and laughed about it. We skirted it. The light brushed the far wall near the other room, and we heard a drawer slide. Not yanked, slid. That detail made it feel worse, like they weren't in a rush. At the top of the stairs, I peered down. Living room was dark except for a dim gray shape of furniture. The space heater's cord trailed across the rug. I realized it could trip us. I pointed at it, and Mira poked it back with her foot. Slow. A board near my knee let out a small tick, and we froze, listening. From the other bedroom, nothing. Then another soft sound, paper rustling. Whoever it was wasn't just looking. They were searching. We started down the stairs, one at a time, toes on the edges where it's quieter. My dad taught me that for sneaking in late. Dumb skill, useful now. Halfway down, the light in the hall stopped moving. We flattened ourselves to the side. The light didn't come back. I could feel Mira trembling through her grip. I wanted to tell her we were okay, but that felt like tempting fate. Kitchen was left off the stairs. Phones were on the counter by the window. Front door was right of the stairs. Lock was the kind you can flip fast. We slid to the bottom step. I looked at Mira. She looked back at me. I raised 3 fingers. 2. 1. I realized this was our only chance to get downstairs while whoever it was searched the other room, and I signaled to Mira that we needed to move now. We crawled out into the hallway and toward the staircase, staying low and moving as quietly as possible while we could hear drawers opening and closing in the other bedroom. We started down the stairs, pressing against the wall to avoid the spots that might creak, and we were almost at the bottom when my foot accidentally knocked into a vase on one of the steps. The vase fell and shattered on the hardwood floor with a crash that sounded impossibly loud in the silent house. Everything upstairs went quiet instantly, and then we heard fast, heavy footsteps running toward the stairs. We both jumped up and ran for the front door, and I grabbed the deadbolt, but the door wouldn't open because in my panic I forgot about the chain lock at the top. Mira reached up and unhooked it, and we burst out onto the porch and ran across the yard toward the road, not looking back, just running as fast as we could in our pajamas and bare feet. I heard the front door bang open behind us and something clatter against the railing, and that was enough to make my legs move even faster. The gravel from the driveway cut our feet, but neither of us said anything. We hit the road and turned left, because that was the way we'd come in earlier, and I remembered there were mailboxes that direction. The night felt big and empty. No cars, no porch lights, nothing. So we kept to the dirt shoulder and tried not to slip. Mira kept whispering, "Don't stop, don't stop," like a rhythm to run to. I looked once over my shoulder and saw nothing but the dark line of trees and the outline of the house. I didn't tell her I thought I heard someone on the porch again. It didn't matter. Running was the only plan. We ran down the dark road for what felt like forever, but was probably about 10 minutes until we reached a house that had lights on, about a mile from the vacation community. An older couple who let us in and called the police right away. The husband met us at the door with a phone already in his hand, and his wife wrapped towels around our feet without asking questions. She kept saying, "You're safe now," and I could tell she meant it, but my brain wasn't ready to believe it. The dispatcher put me on speaker and asked for the address, and if we were hurt, then told us to stay inside and lock the doors. The husband did a quick walk to every window and checked the latch like he had a routine. We sat at their kitchen table, shaking and trying to explain between breaths. I told them about the flashlight next door, the creaking, the cough, the drawers. Mira added details I forgot, like the way the light slid under our door and stopped. 2 patrol cars showed up fast. One officer took our statements while the other talked to the couple. They asked for names, ages, who owned the lake house, when we arrived, if anyone knew we were there. I told them Mira's parents had a key box and the code, and the officers exchanged a look that I didn't like. They said sometimes thieves watch for those boxes and test default codes. They'd been dealing with a string of break-ins at seasonal places. Nothing dramatic, just people who knew the area was empty and methodical enough to work quiet. We rode back with them to the house while another unit circled the road. When we pulled up, the porch light was still off, and the front door was ajar. Inside, the officers moved room to room, announcing themselves, clearing corners. They found the drawer in the upstairs room spilled out, my backpack half unzipped, and the back door cracked. Whoever had been there was gone. No boot prints worth anything on the hardwood, just the mess and the broken vase and a few cabinet doors opened like someone had a checklist. They checked the neighboring house too. It was locked. Through the window we could see a tipped lamp and a scuff on the wall, but nothing to grab onto. The officers said they'd file the report, notify the neighborhood security company, and pass it to the county detectives. But they were honest that these guys were quick and careful. The older couple offered to let us stay the night, and the officers said that was the best option. Mira's parents arrived at dawn, pale and angry in that scared parent way, and after more statements, we drove home. Nobody was ever arrested. Insurance covered the damage. The house got a new deadbolt and a camera. I turned 17 a few months later and still sleep with my phone charging on my nightstand and the bedroom door locked. I keep thinking about that cough, how ordinary it sounded, and how we almost convinced ourselves it was the house, and how close we came to being the kind of story that doesn't end with someone opening a door and running.